Hi, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be talking about some of my favourite books that I've read so far in 2017. So last week, I think, or the week before, I put up my mid-year sort of goals check-in, sort of talking about how I was getting on with my reading goals for 2017. So I'll link that video up here if you haven't watched it. So today I thought I'd talk about some of my favourites that I've read so far. If you've been watching my channel from the very beginning or very recently, you'll probably be able to guess some of the books that are on this list. But nonetheless, I thought I'd talk about 6 that I have really enjoyed so far this year. I'm going to go in order of when I've read them, so from January until now. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. I read this in January. I'd had it on my shelf for a good number of years and just hadn't got around to picking it up. But after watching a few reviews of Burial Rites from people on BookTube sort of around December, January time, that kind of gave me the push to read it. This tells the story of the last woman to be executed in Iceland, and sort of about her crime and her story and sort of it leading up to her execution. The reason I love this so much is because I found the story really compelling. I was totally drawn to Agnes's character, sucked into her story, loved her as a character, thought she was really well developed, really fleshed out. And also I loved the beautiful writing in this. So Hannah Kent had a really good way of describing the setting and kind of bringing Iceland to life, making me want to go there yet again. Even sort of some of the rural places that perhaps you wouldn't get to as a tourist. But yeah, I thought it was utterly compelling, even though you knew what was going to happen because this is based on a true story. You were kind of rooting for Agnes during the book, and yeah, then the inevitable happens. But yeah, it's just fantastic. If you have a copy of this or you're thinking about buying it and you're not sure whether you'll enjoy it, I think if you like historical fiction, if you like thrillers, and this is very literary as well, so if you like sort of like beautiful descriptions or you want to read a book set in Iceland, I think you'll definitely enjoy this. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. So I read this as part of my classics goal for the year. I wanted to read 6 different classics in 2016. So this is a modern classic, and this tells the story of a woman who is unnamed, but she marries Max de Winter, who owns a very grand house somewhere sort of in Devon, I think. After they're married, he takes her back home as his wife, and it's just about what the house and the servants and the mystery surrounding his late wife. And that sort of thing, and it's just told so well. The house is a character in itself in this book, and the descriptions of Manderley and the surrounding area were beautiful. I really liked the unnamed narrator. I could relate to her in a number of ways. She is an unlikable character and a very naive character, but I think because I could relate to her, yeah, I just liked reading from her perspective, sort of laughing at some of her decisions and relating to some of her decisions, not all of them obviously. If you've read this book you'll know what I mean. But yeah, a great classic to pick up. Definitely one that will not bog you down. It's not heavy at all, and it didn't take me that long to read really. So yeah, that's that one. Next up, I'm going to talk about a historical fiction book called The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Again, I picked this up because Reagan over at Paris Project talked about it probably last year, I think, and continues to talk about it as being one of her favourite historical fiction books. And loved it, absolutely loved it. I bought a copy of it, I think at the beginning of the year or the end of last year, something like that. And I picked it up sort of February, March time, don't remember now, and loved it. This tells the story of 2 sisters who live in France in the outbreak of the Second World War. One of the sisters is married with a child and lives sort of in a rural part of France, and the other sister is a lot younger than her, and she goes to a boarding school, and at the beginning of the book she runs away from this boarding school and goes to live again with her father in Paris. The Second World War breaks out, and it's just about what the two sisters do during the war. So one of them very much wants to stay at home and sort of carry on life almost as normal, and the other one wants to do things to help. This was very, very good. It took me a little while to get into. First 100 pages or so were a little bit slow for me, but after that I was hooked, and by the end I was sobbing. So yeah, utterly brilliant. I really enjoyed following the two sisters' stories. So you've got Vianne and Isabel. And I just thought it was so good. Next up I'm going to talk about Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This is a debut novel that came out I think in 2016. So I picked up a copy of this for cheap in foils earlier on this year and read it and absolutely loved it. This tells the story of two sisters again. They both live in Africa. One is married to a slave owner, and the other one is sold into slavery. And then it's about generations of both of their families across the years. You have one chapter from one sister's family, and then you have another chapter from another sister's family. So you follow both of their stories all through the generations. Each chapter is a bit like a short story in itself, so you follow this particular character for a little chunk of their life. It's a very small snapshot, but you get a glimpse into what's going on, and then you sort of see them again when we see the next generations. We get little glimpses back into their lives. But yeah, this was utterly compelling, very, very well written. Each sort of short story or chapter I was totally hooked, and felt like I could read from that particular character's perspective for a lot longer. I would definitely recommend this. Again, this is one that has been hyped quite a lot on BookTube, so again, if you're wondering whether this is worth picking up, I would definitely say so. Number 5 on my list, and I'm not really talking about these in any sort of order, I might do that at the end of the year, but for now these are just 6 favourites in no particular order. So number 5, I'm going to talk about The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I bought a copy of this when I was in New York and brought it back and read it pretty much straight away. So at the end of April, I think it was the middle of April that I read this. This is a story that's inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and it tells the story of Star. And at the beginning of the book, she is driven home from a party by one of her friends called Khalid, and they are stopped by a police officer, and Khalid is shot by the police officer for no reason. And it's just about the fallout of that. It's about her being a witness to it. It's about her life. She lives in one neighbourhood but goes to school in another kind of more sort of white in fact it is a white neighbourhood. So she kind of has this kind of dual life going on. So it's about her struggle with that, about her struggle with telling the truth, and having a voice, and fighting for justice. And it was just absolutely brilliant. It's definitely one that I would recommend to any student of mine, and I have done a couple of times now. Very, very relevant to today, very poignant, and very, very necessary as well. And I've said before that I have no doubt that I will see this on sort of school reading lists, and it should be on there. Young people should be picking books like this up. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one. And the final book that I'm going to talk about is one that I read for the Bailey's Prize shortlist this year, and that is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. This is another debut novel, and this is set in Nigeria in the 1980s, and it follows a couple called Yejide and Akin. And at the beginning of the book, Akin's family want him to marry a second wife because he hasn't been able to conceive a child with his first wife, Yejide. So she obviously isn't happy about that. And then the kind of story goes from there about the fallout of him getting married again and what happens from there. This is a book that will keep you guessing up until the very end. There are lots of twists and turns in here, so it's very compelling from that sort of point of view. It's got lots of issues in here surrounding motherhood, parenthood, the idea of, are you a woman if you haven't had a child? I thought the character development was very good, and it had lots of sort of set against, you know, 1980s Nigeria, so you had lots of things in there about what was going on at that particular time in that country. This is one that I would definitely recommend you read from that shortlist. I know The Power by Naomi Alderman won this year, and I did really enjoy that book, but from my personal perspective, this is the one from the shortlist that I would definitely pick up. This is the one that I definitely enjoyed the most. There you go, guys. They are 6 books that I have really enjoyed reading this year, 6 favourites so far in 2016. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.